Hello, my name is TJ Lee. I am the writer and creator of Dusklight Radio, and if you are seeing this or hearing this, that means the algorithm is continuing to favor my 30 in 30 experiment, where I'm taking 30 straight days of 30 uploads to see if it will jumpstart my channel. I hope you enjoy your time here. Dusklight Radio is a channel that is focused on high-quality horror audio dramatic content. That means dynamic voice acting, original sound design, unique music, and good voice acting, and of course, at the centerpiece of it all, good horror stories crafted by myself and by some of my colleagues. We also have a podcast called The Nightmare Detectives, which is set in the popular Sturgeon universe. If you've been on Dark Somnium's channel, or Romnex, or pretty much any of the big YouTube channels that do horror, you'll have heard of something from the Sturgeon universe that I wrote. This channel is hosted by Everett Blackwell, who is a half-dead host. He's got a lovely southern drawl, and I'm sure he'll look forward to meeting you all. But the purpose of this is to let you all know that we're doing this every single day, except Christmas, until January 15th, at which point we'll be switching to a 3-day-a-week schedule. That's Mondays for SCP videos, Wednesdays for regular horror, and Fridays for something a little bit special, with one feature-length entry every single month. I really hope you enjoy your time here. If you like what you're seeing, please consider subscribing, drop a comment, let me know the algorithm found you. It's been overwhelming so far. Consider signing up to the Patreon if you want to support me, and there's a Discord below as well. Alright, I think I've waffled on enough for 90 seconds. I really hope you enjoy this week's servings of horror goodness.
"1 hour till midnight,"
John shouted as he ran through the living room. I glanced towards the small closet in the hallway. The door had been removed and propped up against the opposite wall, as usual, and the mistletoe had hung up in the center of the doorway. The closet was empty, and there was no light coming from inside. I held on to my glass of water, nervous. I never drank at the annual holiday party. The things we're about to see were bad enough sober, and I couldn't even imagine what it would be like if I were drunk. I looked over at Mel, who was smoking a joint as she did every year. I'm not sure how she managed to get through the events of the night, but maybe being high helped her to process what she saw. John ran back through the living room, stopping to make sure all of the windows were locked and all of the curtains were shut. He walked over to the front door, rattling the doorknob and pulling on the door to make sure that it too was locked, before making his way into the kitchen. The rest of us, Ben, Alma, Mel, and I, sat around the living room in silence. Even though we had done this every year for the last 3 years, it wasn't something you could easily get used to. The horrors that we would witness tonight would be anything like the horrors from last year or the year before. We took over this ritual from our parents, who had passed it on to us when we turned 18. Ever since then, we have made sure that every year, on Christmas Eve, we gather at John's house to make sure that we keep all of the holiday horrors away from the rest of you. The drugs and the food are only here to distract us, although it hardly ever works. We all gather on the day before Christmas Eve, a few minutes before midnight, and we stay inside John's house until midnight on Christmas night. It doesn't always start the same, but never before 1 p.m. on Christmas Eve, so we always make sure that we're inside the house and that all the exits are locked tight before the fun starts. And I use the word fun very loosely here. I set my glass of water down as Mel passed by me, letting us know she was going to pee before it all started. She came back fairly quickly and plopped back down on the couch, sighing. Mel was always annoyed that we had to do this. She didn't seem as affected by it as the rest of us, and would usually spend most of the month of December complaining about the holiday party.
"John!"
Ben shouted suddenly.
"It's starting!"
I looked back at the closet. Ben was right. It was starting. And standing in the threshold under the mistletoe was a creature whose top half was a reindeer with the bottom half of a nude human male. It stood there, looking towards us. Its head had a big hole where its left eye should have been, as if it had been shot there, and there was dried blood all over its face. Its left antler was broken in half, and I could see some bugs crawling around the wound in its face.
"What the fuck is that?"
No one replied. We just stood there, watching it as it watched us. It retreated back into the closet before it got down on all fours and charged towards us. I still flinched even though I knew I couldn't make it more than a few feet away from the closet. I remember asking my parents once why we had to make sure all the exits were locked, even though most of the monsters couldn't get more than a few feet away from the mistletoe. They didn't give me a direct answer, only that making sure that everything was locked guaranteed that nothing would get out.
Jesus fucking Christ!
It continued to charge towards us, ramming into the invisible barriers each time. Then, just as randomly as it had appeared, the creature disappeared, and there was a few minutes of empty silence. No one said a word, but we all watched as the next creature appeared. This one was human, but there was something wrong with him as usual. The man had been flattened out to resemble the shape of a gingerbread man. He had large, rotting gumdrops that were meant to be gingerbread buttons sewed down his front. His mouth had been pulled back at the corners with some sort of metal hoops that pierced through his skin in order to give him a permanent smile. He waddled from side to side as he attempted to balance on his flattened feet. As he tried to walk out of the closet, his arms got stuck in the doorway and he ran into it over and over, slamming himself into it harder and harder each time until there was a sickening crunching noise and his arms flopped backwards. He finally waddled through the doorway, and this time, he made it out further than the first creature had, and began waddling towards us.
Fuck this,
Ben said, leaping behind the couch to take cover. I took a few steps back as the man continued to waddle towards the living room. Suddenly, a branch pierced through his chest from the back, and he was violently pulled back into the closet, where he disappeared. That was immediately followed by dozens of branches that snaked their way around the floor of the house, climbing up the walls as they made their way around the rest of the structure. The branches were covered in the sharpest pine needles I had ever seen, with a few random, broken ornaments hanging off of them. I jumped onto a couch as the branches made their way into the living room, and everyone else followed my lead as we watched the branches weave in and out of the floorboards. Suddenly, Alma screamed and I turned towards her. Some of the branches had wrapped around the legs of the chair she was on, and she was being pulled towards the closet. John attempted to reach out for her as she was dragged past him, but the branches began to snake up and intertwine until they created a sort of protective dome around the chair, trapping Alma inside. She continued to yell as I tried to figure out a way to get to her without the branches getting to me, but it seemed impossible. It was like the branches had a mind of their own and were making sure that none of us could help Alma. We watched as she was dragged into the closet along with the chairs before the branches finally retreated.
What was that? They'd never taken any of us before.
No one replied as we continued to watch the closet. Suddenly, Alma leaped out and ran, but was stopped a few feet away from the doorway.
What?
She shouted, panicked.
Let me out!
John leapt off the coffee table and ran over, grabbing hold of Alma's hand and attempted to pull her away from the doorway. But he couldn't.
Don't leave me here! Please help me!
Alma sobbed. Ben ran over and tried to help John, but something was holding Alma back and stopping them from pulling her away.
Ow!
I ran over as Mel followed. What happened?
I don't know. Did we pull too hard?
John asked Alma.
Ow!
Alma cried again, louder this time. Alma, what's wrong?
It hurts!
She shouted as she fell to her knees. We watched as she continued to shout out in pain, and then we realized what was happening. Her skin was being peeled off in one large chunk. Her biceps had been exposed as the skin continued to peel from the back to the front until everything, including her face, came off. Alma continued to scream the whole time, even after her skin was off. Her skin then began crawling towards us as she screamed and cried in the background, and it started to make sense why John's parents had told him to find a remote area to host the parties at. We began to back away as her skin continued to crawl towards us. I soon realized that it was heading towards John specifically. As he backed into a wall, it continued to snake towards him, climbing up his body. It was at this point that I realized that Alma had stopped screaming, and I turned just in time to see her limp body being dragged back into the closet. It looked like she was dead. I started to get anxious then, None of the things we witnessed had ever affected us this much. Usually, some of us would walk away with some scratches, sure, but nothing this permanent. I took a deep breath in as I tried to ignore the voice in the brain that was screaming at me to get out of the house as soon as possible. But I knew that I couldn't. I couldn't let all of these things out into the world. I turned back to look at John, as Alma's skin began wrapping itself around his torso until it tightened and formed a weird skin sweater around him. John started to gag, and I looked away as I felt the urge to vomit. John began freaking out, and I looked back to see him attempting to peel the skin sweater off his body. Every time he pulled part of it off, it began to bleed, until his hands and legs were covered in blood. He started to cry, scratching at Alma's skin as he tried desperately to peel it off. It did come off eventually, and John kicked it aside as he ran into the kitchen. I heard the faucet open as he continued crying.
Oh, God.
I turned at the sound of Ben's voice to see small elves walking out of the closet. They were dressed in typical green outfits, but they were severely deformed, with different-sized heads, arms, and legs. We watched as they all headed towards the pile of Alma's skin. They began to pick it up and tear pieces off of it with their teeth, and ate it until it was gone. Then, they got on the floor and licked up all the blood before returning back into the closet.
There's only 5 minutes left until midnight,
Ben said, breaking the silence. Do you think it's over then?
No.
Mel replied. I looked over to see that she was pointing at the closet. I could hear footsteps coming from inside.
Do you feel that?
I turned, not noticing that he had come back from the kitchen. We stood still as I began to notice that the house was getting cold. It continued to drop in temperature until my teeth were chattering. The footsteps continued even though nothing appeared. I rubbed my arms as I tried to warm up and began to notice a thin layer of ice appearing on every item in the house. For the next few minutes, the house continued to grow colder and colder until I was sure that we were going to die. I could feel my heartbeat slow down as my fingers turned blue. My eyes had started to burn from the cold, and I could no longer move. Then, just when I thought it was all over, it was gone, and the house warmed up in the blink of an eye. Is it over?
Yeah, it's midnight.
Where's Alma?
I carefully walked over to the closet, peering inside. It was empty. There was no sign of Alma anywhere. What the fuck happened?
I don't know.
This has never happened before.
She's dead. There's nothing we can do about it.
She began to gather her stuff, and we watched as she threw open the front door and left, slamming the door shut behind her.
What do we tell her parents?
I don't know, I shrugged.
I should get going too.
I could tell that he was about to cry, and I stepped out of his way as he left the house. I could feel tears welling up in my eyes, and I excused myself as I ran upstairs and shut the bathroom door behind me. I splashed cold water on my face as I tried to make sense of what had happened. I wondered why this time had been different. As I racked my brain for reasons, I felt a sudden chill as I noticed it was abnormally cold in the bathroom. I turned around as I heard a car start and stood there, staring at the open bathroom window. My heart began to hammer against my chest as my thoughts ran a million miles a minute. I walked over to the window and glanced down just in time to see Alma's car backing out of the driveway. Confused, I stuck my head out the window and squinted as I tried to make out the driver. As the car turned out into the street, I got a direct view into the driver's seat, where I saw a skinned, blistering red Alma drive off down the road. Most heartfelt greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. I eagerly welcome you to Sturgeon's most premier station, Dusk Light Radio, hosted by yours truly, the effervescent, ethereal, and immersive Everett J. Blackwell. This fantastic tale of a seasonal ritual was penned by phenomenal author Gabie Rivera. You've already heard Gabie's story from last week regarding the detective story Hello Mother, and of course the famed Sugar Daddy story on NoSleep. More of Gabie's work can be found linked below, alongside a link to her subreddit. You'll hopefully see more of Gabie's work in 2026. This tale was performed, of course, by our resident janitor TJ Lee, all hail his janitorial wisdom, We Try Horror, A Different Gabie, Lady Euclid, and Viidith. Please give them all some love and check out their channels in the links below or using the collaboration function we utilize for YouTube. Now, normally I'd go into my usual Blackwell spiel here, however, we're at the end of the video. If you've stuck around long enough, this is a sample of what our usual introductions to Duskguard transmissions are like. A link to one of our normal lengthy transmission videos is below. However, for the next 30 days as of December 15th, you will not be getting those introductions unless it is a special Sturgeon video, such as the next chapter in our ongoing series coming out before the new year. You see, we want to test out the algorithm to see how well YouTube responds to a regular series of posts. So we decided between myself and the wonderful Viidith to do a 30 in 30 challenge. 30 days, 30 videos, no days off, except for Christmas, which will make up on the schedule. At the end of that time, we'll look at our metrics, see how well it's responded, if any new listeners have come to the station, and we can then make an informed decision about how we want to progress. I can tell you right now, however, that as of Season 6, in 2026 for Duskguard Radio, we will be going to 3 videos a week, an SCP video on Mondays, and normal, no sleep or creepypasta story on Wednesdays, and on Fridays we'll be doing something special. Every single month we'll be doing a compilation of our best stories from the month, and you'll also get a special feature-length Sturgeon or feature-length creepypasta story with immersive sound design, SFX, and voice acting. Very few things are going to be changing except the quality of our production. With that, I bring you to our outros, which are very important because this is the time where we thank all of our patrons for making this possible. If you want to sign up, it's as little as $1 a month and you get exclusive content, early access videos and stories, updates, and more. You can even suggest videos and stories for me to cover on the channel. But times are tough and we will always be grateful for your support no matter what form it comes in. Financial, spiritual, corporeal, maniacal, whatever you want. Either way, it really helps us out. And consider joining the Discord. We have a wonderful community at the listening station and we'd love to have you there. Duskguard gives thanks to, first, our Purple Crayon Eaters, Echo Kane, Gail Allstott, Alex, Mike, Candyman Gloving, Ashabel, Amara, Phi, Max, and Feeny Von Kama. Our janitors, Allie, Shane Lewis, Dux, Joy Flint Healy, Sabine Eclipse, Death 31, Scott, Heather Cayley, Adrian R., Amy, Arkham Cookie, and Alex Nunez. Our nightmare detectives, Deliria, Melanie Schaefer, and Fox Clifford. Our void walkers, Josh Woods and Professor Creepypasta. And of course, our Blackwell family. Great Uncle Ven Blackwell, who really seems to be hanging around the furnishings lately. I could swear that I've seen him trying to reanimate something from in the wallpaper. He keeps stroking it softly and saying, "Hush, little one, soon you can be free." Ethan Blackwell, the master of repo and infuriating the outer gods alongside his BFF, Jimmy. Jackal Blackwell, the scourge of gas station sushi outlets. Clue Blackwell, the twisting, shambling horror. Tabitha Blackwell, wearing a muscle tee with Kaio's face as a skull she smashed, declaring herself the Spine Queen. And of course, Papa Kaio Blackwell, preparing his greatest weapon, the Spine Lord, and his many, many legions of bone fragments. We love and fear you, Papa, and we thank you humbly for your patronage and look to see you bright and early for Duskguard orientation. Purple crayons and existential dread will be provided. And one last time, listeners, close your eyes and breathe with me. Remember, no matter how bad things are, how cruel people can be, and how heavy your shoulders may feel with the weight of the world bearing down on them, Dusklord will always be here to lift the load and provide you with some respite. Drink some hot cocoa with chocolate sprinkles and fat marshmallows. Have some s'mores. Watch a video about liminal spaces, and sleep on the cool side of the pillow with the window open and the stars twinkling down on you. Start and end each day with kindness in your heart. You matter, you are loved, and every day is another chance. I'll see you again when the sun sets and dusk enters the station.